The thing about suburban galas is that everyone pretends the parking lot isn't a dick-measuring contest. I'm watching Adam Mitchell toss his Tesla keys like confetti while his wife Laura stands there with the kind of smile that could cut glass. The Willowbrook Country Club spring fundraiser is in full swing, and the usual suspects are performing their annual theatre of charitable giving and social positioning. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Did you see the new Porsche? Veronica Sterling whispers to her circle, jewelry rattling like loose change in a designer purse. She's Adam's business partner at Sterling Mitchell Auto, and tonight she's wearing enough diamonds to fund a small country's infrastructure. The Taycan, electric, but still has that German engineering mystique. Beverly Wright, our HOA president, nods approvingly while snapping photos for the neighborhood group chat. Her husband Tom looks uncomfortable in his rented tux, but Beverly thrives at these events. She collects social currency like baseball cards. Claire Hoffman, Beverly's lieutenant in all things neighborhood politics, holds up her phone. Support local businesses, she captions under a photo of the dealership's espresso machine setup. The irony isn't lost on me. Claire hasn't bought a car in 8 years. Adam's performing again, regaling a small crowd with stories about his latest sales numbers. Moved 17 units last month, he announces, loud enough for half the room to hear. Premium vehicles, premium clients. It's all about understanding what people really want. Laura's standing slightly apart from his audience, wearing a simple black dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. She works at the Meridian Gallery downtown, and there's something about the way she carries herself that suggests she's cataloging every detail of tonight's performance. The key, Adam continues, literally jingling his key fob, is making people feel like they're not just buying transportation, they're buying into a lifestyle. Veronica laughs, the sound sharp and practiced. Adam always knows exactly what to say to close a deal. That's when it happens. Adam, riding high on his own performance, decides to make a grand gesture. He pulls out Laura's keys, her practical Honda Civic keys, and tosses them toward her with theatrical flair. "Find your own ride," he says with a grin that's supposed to be playful, but lands somewhere between dismissive and cruel. The keys hit the marble floor with a metallic clatter that seems to echo longer than physics should allow. Laura doesn't bend to pick them up. She doesn't react at all, actually. She just looks at Adam with that same glass-cutting smile. "Interesting choice," she says quietly. Beverly's phone captures the moment, the scattered keys, Laura's expression, Adam's oblivious grin. Within minutes, it'll be in the group chat with some innocuous caption that doesn't quite hide the gossip potential. I watch Laura excuse herself from the crowd and step outside onto the club's terrace. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I can see her making a phone call. Her posture is straight, professional. She's not crying or calling a friend for emotional support. This looks like business. Inside, Adam's moved on to discussing market trends with Dylan Torres, his sales manager. Dylan's been with the dealership for 3 years and has the kind of aggressive charm that works well in car sales but makes him insufferable at social gatherings. "The electric vehicle market is exploding," Dylan says, gesturing with his whiskey glass. "People want to feel good about their purchases. Environmental responsibility sells." "As long as they're willing to pay for the privilege," Veronica adds. "The margins on the premium electrics are beautiful." Tom Wright approaches me near the bar. He's one of the few people here I actually like. Beverly's husband runs a small accounting firm and has the rare quality of being genuinely decent. "That was awkward," he says quietly, nodding toward where the key incident occurred. "Adam's always been a performer," I reply. "Tonight, he just had a bigger stage." Laura didn't seem surprised, Tom observes. More like she was expecting it. He's right. Laura's reaction wasn't shock or hurt. It was something closer to confirmation, like Adam had just proven a point she'd been waiting for him to make. The evening continues with its predictable rhythm of small talk and social positioning. The charity auction raises a respectable amount for the local children's hospital, with Adam making a show of bidding on a weekend golf package and Veronica securing a wine-tasting experience in Napa. Laura returns from her phone call and mingles politely, but there's something different about her energy. She's more focused, like she's shifted into a different mode of operation. Near the evening's end, I overhear Beverly and Claire discussing the key incident in hushed tones near the coat check. "I mean, marriage is complicated," Beverly says diplomatically, "but that seemed a bit public for a private joke." "Laura's always been independent," Claire replies, "maybe too independent for some people's taste." They don't notice Laura approaching from behind until she's close enough to join the conversation. "Independence is interesting," Laura says conversationally. "It's like insurance. You don't think about it until you need it." Beverly flushes slightly. "Oh, Laura, we were just discussing my marriage in a public venue." Laura's tone is pleasant, but there's steel underneath. "How thoughtful of you to be concerned." She collects her coat and purse with unhurried precision. "I'll be taking a cab home," she announces to no one in particular. The Honda's keys seem to have gotten misplaced. As she walks toward the exit, I notice her pull out her phone again. Another business call from the look of it. Whatever Laura's planning, it started the moment those keys hit the floor. The remaining guests begin filtering out to the parking lot, where Adam's Tesla sits gleaming under the security lights. He's searching his pockets with increasing confusion. "Has anyone seen my keys?" he asks the departing crowd. Veronica checks her purse. Dylan pats down his jacket, but the Tesla keys are nowhere to be found. Adam's forced to call for a ride, his earlier bravado replaced by practical frustration. From the back seat of my own car, I watch him waiting by the club entrance, phone pressed to his ear. The irony is perfect, too perfect to be accidental. Laura's cab pulls away just as Adam's Uber arrives. Through the rear window, I catch a glimpse of her profile, calm and composed. In her lap, barely visible, is the distinctive black and silver of a Tesla key fob. Tomorrow should be interesting. The HOA email arrives at 7:23 a.m., marked urgent parking violations. Subject, excessive vehicle overflow, spring gala from Beverly Wright, HOA President. Timestamp, 7:23 a.m. Dear Willowbrook residents, last night's charity event resulted in significant parking overflow onto residential streets. Please remember that guest parking requires advance notification to avoid citations. Several residents reported blocked driveways and emergency access concerns. Additionally, please be mindful of noise levels when returning from evening events. Our community standards exist to protect everyone's quality of life. Best regards, Beverly Wright Willowbrook HOA President. I'm reading this over my morning coffee when my phone buzzes with the neighborhood group chat notification. Claire's already active. Claire H. Beautiful event last night. So proud of our local businesses. Beverly C. Agreed. Though we should discuss event planning protocols. Tom C. Coffee's on if anyone needs it. Long night for everyone. The subtext is thick enough to spread on toast. Beverly's fishing for gossip about the key incident, Claire's performing loyalty to Adam's dealership, and Tom's offering Switzerland. My doorbell rings at 8:15. Tom's standing on my porch with 2 travel mugs and the expression of someone who needs to share information. "Walk?" he suggests. We head toward the neighborhood's walking trail, past the manicured lawns and carefully curated landscaping that makes Willowbrook look like a lifestyle magazine spread. "Laura called me this morning," Tom says once we're away from potential eavesdroppers. "Professional consultation." "About what?" "Business entity structures, specifically the legal mechanics of partnership dissolution and asset protection." I stop walking. "She's divorcing Adam?" "Not divorce, business. Sterling Mitchell Auto is more complicated than most people realize. Laura's been a silent partner since the beginning. Her inheritance provided the initial capital. This is news to me. Adam's always presented himself as a self-made success story. How silent, I ask. 40% ownership, co-signatory on all major contracts, joint authorization on business credit lines. Tom's accountant brain is in full gear. She's been letting Adam play CEO, but legally, she's got significant control. We resume walking as Tom continues. Dylan's been padding invoices for months, small amounts, spread across multiple vendor accounts. Laura noticed the discrepancies during routine bookkeeping review. How much are we talking about? Enough to trigger an IRS audit if reported incorrectly. Dylan's been using business accounts for personal expenses, then categorizing them as promotional costs. The trail loops past Beverly's house, where she's aggressively roses while clearly watching for neighbors to gossip with. She waves with the enthusiasm of someone who wants to be invited into our conversation. Morning, boys. Lovely day after such a wonderful evening. Tom waves politely, but doesn't slow down. Beverly's forced to return to her roses with obvious disappointment. There's more, Tom says quietly. Laura's been documenting everything. Photos of contracts, forwarded emails, detailed notes. She's building a case. For what? Partnership misconduct, breach of fiduciary duty, possibly fraud, depending on how aggressive she wants to get. We reach the trail's halfway point, where a small bench overlooks the neighborhood's retention pond. It's peaceful here, almost pastoral, if you ignore the fact that the pond exists primarily for stormwater management. Why are you telling me this? I ask. Tom sits heavily on the bench. Because Beverly's planning something. She's been calling other board members, trying to organize some kind of intervention. She thinks Laura's having a breakdown and needs community support. Meaning she wants to stage a confrontation, get the neighbors involved, pressure Laura to be more reasonable about whatever's happening with Adam. The irony is perfect. Beverly's trying to organize a social intervention for someone who's methodically building a legal case. When? Today, this afternoon. Beverly's planning to corner Laura during her usual gardening time. I check my watch. Laura typically tends her front garden around 2 p.m., when the afternoon light is optimal for her prize-winning roses. It's one of the few predictable elements in her otherwise private routine. You should warn her, I suggest. Tom shakes his head. I don't think Laura needs warning. I think she's counting on it. We walk back toward our respective houses, passing the various stages of suburban morning routine. Sprinklers hiss across perfectly maintained lawns, joggers follow their established routes, and the mail truck makes its methodical progress through the neighborhood's curved streets. At 11:30, I notice Laura leaving her house with the yellow legal pad and her camera. She's dressed in business casual, not gardening clothes. Whatever she's planning, it's not about roses. The HOA group chat stays active throughout the morning. Claire H. Anyone else notice the Tesla in the Sterling driveway? Thought Adam drove that Beverly C. Probably just switching cars. You know how car dealers are. Dylan T. Actually, that's a loaner from the lot. Adam's getting his detailed Tom C. Nice to have options. Dylan's participation in the neighborhood chat is relatively new. He moved to Willowbrook 6 months ago, renting a house 3 streets over. His presence in our community discussions always feels slightly performative, like he's trying to establish credibility. At 1:45 p.m., I position myself at my front window with a clear view of Laura's house. Beverly's already in position, pruning shears in hand, working on the hedge that borders Laura's property. Claire's stationed herself at her mailbox, clearly waiting for the show to begin. Laura emerges at exactly 2 p.m., but instead of gardening clothes, she's still in her business attire. She's carrying a folder and her phone, and she walks directly to where Beverly's pretending to garden. Beverly, Laura says pleasantly, perfect timing. I was hoping to catch you. Beverly straightens, clearly caught off guard by Laura taking the initiative. Oh, Laura, I was just thinking we should chat about last night and, well, everything. Absolutely, Laura agrees. I have some things to show you. Other neighbors are finding excuses to be outside. Mrs. Patterson from 2 houses down is suddenly very interested in her mailbox. The Johnsons are washing a car that was already clean. Laura opens her folder and pulls out what looks like a bank statement. I wanted to thank you for documenting last night's events so thoroughly, Laura says, her voice carrying clearly across the quiet street. Your photos were particularly helpful for my legal consultation this morning. Beverly's face goes through several interesting color changes. Legal consultation. Business partnership issues, Laura explains matter-of-factly. When one partner uses company resources for unauthorized personal expenses, it creates liability for all parties involved. She shows Beverly the bank statement. For instance, last weekend's wine tasting in Napa, the one Veronica posted about on Instagram, that was charged to our business promotional account. Claire abandons any pretense of checking mail and moves closer. But surely that's just a business dinner, Beverly says weakly. Business dinners don't typically include couples' spa packages, Laura replies, or private wine cellar tours, or luxury hotel suites. The neighborhood audience is growing. Tom emerges from his house, ostensibly to retrieve his garbage can, but clearly interested in the conversation. Laura continues with the calm precision of someone presenting evidence. The interesting thing about business partnerships is that all partners are liable for fraudulent expenses, even partners who weren't aware of the fraud. She pulls out another document. This is a vendor cancellation notice for the dealership's summer promotional event. As co-owner, I'm exercising my right to terminate the contract due to policy violations. Beverly's pruning shears are forgotten in her hands. Laura, maybe we should discuss this privately. Privacy is interesting, Laura interrupts. Last night, my private marriage became public entertainment. Today, my business decisions are public record. The sprinkler system chooses this moment to activate, sending arcs of water across the lawn between them. The timing is so perfect it feels orchestrated. Laura steps back to avoid the spray, but her voice remains steady. I've also filed a complaint with the Better Business Bureau regarding unauthorized use of business credit lines, and requested an audit of all promotional expenses from the past 6 months. Dylan's car pulls into his driveway 3 streets over, but he's close enough to see the gathering crowd. He parks and walks over, trying to look casual. Everything okay here, ladies? Laura turns to face him with the same pleasant expression she's maintained throughout the conversation. Dylan, perfect timing. I was just explaining to Beverly about the expense audit. I'm sure you'll want to review your promotional receipts to ensure everything's properly documented. Dylan's face goes pale. I'm sure everything's in order. I'm sure it is, Laura agrees. The audit will confirm that one way or another. She closes her folder with decisive finality. Beverly, thank you for your concern about my well-being. As you can see, I'm managing just fine. Laura walks back toward her house, leaving Beverly holding pruning shears and Dylan looking like he's swallowed something unpleasant. The neighborhood audience begins to disperse, but the group chat immediately explodes. Claire H., did anyone else hear that conversation? Mrs. Patterson, what audit? Should we be concerned about property values? Tom C., business partnerships are complicated. Everyone should consult their own advisors. Beverly C., I think there may have been some misunderstandings. Dylan T., typing. Dylan's message never comes through. Whatever he was planning to say, he apparently thought better of it. By evening, the story has spread through the neighborhood with the efficiency of a well-designed irrigation system. Details get embellished, context gets lost, but the core facts remain. Laura's not the victim everyone assumed she was. At 9:30 p.m., Adam's Tesla finally returns to their driveway. Through my window, I can see him and Laura talking on their front porch. The conversation looks calm, businesslike, no dramatic gestures or raised voices. Whatever Laura's planning, she's just getting started. The Sterling Mitchell Auto Dealership occupies a prime corner lot on Commercial Drive, all glass and chrome, and carefully positioned luxury vehicles. I arrive at 9 a.m. to find Laura's Honda already in the parking lot, along with an unfamiliar sedan that screams accountant from its conservative lines and practical color. Laura's inside the showroom, wearing a sharp navy blazer and carrying a leather portfolio. She's not browsing cars. She's studying financial documents with a woman in a grey suit who's definitely the accountant Tom mentioned. Adam's nowhere to be seen, but Dylan's hovering near the espresso machine with the nervous energy of someone who knows trouble is coming but can't figure out how to avoid it. The showroom is impressive in the way that expensive things usually are. Gleaming vehicles positioned under strategic lighting, promotional banners, advertising spring sales events, and the kind of background music that suggests sophistication without being distracting. Veronica emerges from the office area, her heels clicking authoritatively on the polished concrete floor. She's dressed for battle in a white power suit that probably costs more than most people's monthly rent. "Laura," she says with forced warmth. "What a pleasant surprise. Are you here to see Adam? He's at the bank this morning, handling some routine business matters." Laura looks up from her documents with that same glass-cutting smile from the gala. "Actually, I'm here on business. My business." She gestures to the accountant. "This is Janet Morrison, CPA. She's conducting a review of partnership assets and expenditures." Veronica's composure slips slightly. "I'm not sure I understand. As co-owner of Sterling Mitchell Auto, I'm exercising my right to audit business expenses and review operational procedures." Laura's voice is professionally pleasant but absolutely firm. Janet has all the necessary documentation. Dylan abandons the espresso machine and approaches with what he probably thinks is casual confidence. "Laura, maybe there's been some kind of misunderstanding. Adam handles all the business operations." "Adam manages daily operations," Laura corrects. "But partnership decisions require co-owner approval, which brings us to some interesting discrepancies in recent expenditures." Janet opens her own portfolio and produces a stack of bank statements and credit card records. The documentation is impressive, color-coded, cross-referenced, and organized with the kind of precision that makes accountants happy and guilty parties nervous. For instance, Laura continues, the promotional account shows charges for personal travel, entertainment expenses that don't align with business purposes, and vendor payments that exceed authorized amounts. She pulls out a specific receipt. "This wine tasting weekend in Napa, charged to our promotional budget. Can you explain the business purpose of a couple's retreat to a luxury resort?" Veronica's face goes through several interesting color changes. "That was a client entertainment expense." "Which clients?" Laura asks. "Because I don't see any client names associated with the charges, just personal names on the hotel registration." Dylan tries to interject. "Look, maybe we should wait for Adam to get back." "Adam's at the bank trying to increase our credit line without my authorization," Laura says calmly. "Which he can't do because I'm co-signatory on all business accounts." The showroom has attracted an audience. 2 sales associates and a customer browsing the luxury SUV section are pretending not to listen while clearly hanging on every word. Janet produces another document. There's also the matter of unauthorized vendor contracts. Several agreements were signed without proper partnership approval. "That's ridiculous," Dylan snaps. "I have full authority to negotiate vendor relationships." "You have authority to negotiate," Laura agrees, "but not to execute contracts exceeding $5,000 without co-owner approval." She shows him a highlighted contract. "This promotional event planning agreement is for $15,000, signed last week, without my knowledge or consent." Dylan's confident facade is cracking. "That's a technicality." Law is made of technicalities, Laura replies, and this particular technicality makes the contract void. Veronica tries to regain control of the situation. Laura, I think you're overreacting to what happened at the gala. Adam was just being playful. This isn't about the gala, Laura interrupts. This is about 6 months of unauthorized expenses, fraudulent vendor contracts, and misuse of business resources. She turns to address the growing audience of employees and customers. As co-owner of this dealership, I'm implementing immediate changes to our operational procedures. Dylan steps directly into her path, his face flushed with anger and panic. You can't just walk in here and start making demands. I'm not making demands, Laura says quietly. I'm exercising legal authority. Like hell you are, Dylan snarls, moving closer. You're just some bitter housewife trying to cause trouble because your husband embarrassed you. The showroom goes silent. Even the background music seems to pause. Laura looks at Dylan with the kind of calm that precedes natural disasters. Step aside, she says. Make me, Dylan challenges. What happens next is so fast and precise that it takes a moment for everyone to process. Laura's right hand moves in a sharp, economical arc that connects with Dylan's cheek with a sound like a gunshot. Dylan staggers backward, more from shock than force, his hand pressed to his face. You hit me, he says in disbelief. You were blocking my path and making threats, Laura replies matter-of-factly. I removed the obstacle. The customer browsing SUVs pulls out his phone and starts recording. One of the sales associates is already on her phone, presumably calling someone in authority. Within minutes, a police cruiser pulls into the parking lot. Officer Jenna Martinez enters the showroom with the weary professionalism of someone who's dealt with plenty of domestic and business disputes. What's the situation here? She asks. Dylan immediately starts talking. She assaulted me. I want to press charges. Officer Martinez looks at Laura, who's standing calmly with her hands visible and her portfolio tucked under her arm. Ma'am? Mr. Torres was blocking my path and making verbal threats, Laura explains. I used minimal force to remove the obstacle and protect myself. That's not what happened, Dylan protests. Officer Martinez looks around the showroom, taking note of the witnesses, the recording customer, and the obvious business dispute context. Anyone else see what happened? The customer with the phone steps forward. I got it on video. The guy was being aggressive, got in her face. She slapped him once and stepped back. One of the sales associates nods. Dylan was yelling, blocking her path. She warned him to move. Officer Martinez makes notes in her incident book. Mr. Torres, do you want to press charges for assault? Dylan looks around the showroom, clearly realizing that the witness testimony isn't going to support his version of events. She can't just hit people. Actually, Officer Martinez says, if someone's blocking your path and making threats, you have the right to use reasonable force to protect yourself. This looks like a business dispute that got heated. She closes her notebook. My recommendation is that everyone cool off and handle this through proper business channels. No charges filed, but I'm documenting the incident in case there are future problems. After Officer Martinez leaves, the showroom atmosphere remains tense. Dylan retreats to the office area, presumably to call Adam. Veronica tries to salvage the situation by approaching Laura with conciliatory gestures. Laura, I think we all want to resolve this professionally. Excellent, Laura agrees. Janet, please provide Ms. Sterling with copies of the audit findings. I'll expect written responses to all discrepancies within 72 hours. She turns to address the remaining staff. Effective immediately, all expenditures exceeding $1,000 require my written approval. All vendor contracts must be reviewed by legal counsel before execution. You can't just change our operational procedures, Veronica protests. Laura pulls out another document from her portfolio. This is a copy of our partnership agreement. Section 12 clearly states that either partner can implement financial controls during audit periods. She hands Veronica the document. I'm implementing financial controls during an audit period. Janet packs up her materials with the satisfied efficiency of someone whose work here is done. Ms. Mitchell, I'll have the complete audit report ready by tomorrow morning. Thank you, Janet. Please copy Mr. Torres and Ms. Sterling on all findings. As they prepare to leave, Laura pauses at the customer service desk and picks up a promotional flyer for the upcoming summer sales event. This event is cancelled, she announces to the room. All vendor contracts are under review. Dylan emerges from the office area, phone in hand. Adam's on his way back. You can't just cancel our biggest promotional event. I just did, Laura replies. The vendor contracts were executed without proper authorization. They're void. She walks toward the exit with Janet, leaving behind a showroom full of confused employees and one very angry sales manager. Outside, I watch from my car as Laura and Janet have a brief conversation in the parking lot. Janet hands Laura another set of documents. They shake hands professionally, and Janet drives away in her practical sedan. Laura sits in her Honda for several minutes, making phone calls. Through the showroom's glass walls, I can see Dylan pacing frantically while Veronica tries to manage damage control with the remaining staff. At 11:30, Adam's Tesla screeches into the parking lot. He storms into the showroom with the kind of righteous anger that suggests he still doesn't understand the situation he's walking into. Laura starts her Honda and drives away, leaving Adam to discover the aftermath of her morning's work. Whatever she's planning next, she's just removed several key pieces from Adam's chessboard. Tom calls me at 6 a.m. the next morning with the tone of someone who's been up all night processing information. You need to know what's happening, he says without preamble. Adam filed paperwork yesterday, claiming Laura's having a mental health crisis and trying to get her removed as business partner. I'm barely awake, but this gets my attention fast. Can he do that? Not legally, no. But he's planning to make a public case for it. Beverly's organizing what she's calling a community intervention for this afternoon. Jesus. Where? Veronica's house. They're billing it as a neighborhood support meeting, but it's really an ambush. They want to pressure Laura into getting help and stepping back from business decisions. I look out my window toward Laura's house. Her Honda's in the driveway, and there are lights on in what I assume is her home office. Does Laura know? I think she's counting on it, Tom says. She asked me about public records access yesterday, specifically city permitting databases and business licensing information. What's she looking for? I'm not sure, but she spent 3 hours at City Hall yesterday afternoon, and she had lunch with someone from the Regional Auto Dealers Association. This is getting complicated fast. I grab coffee and head outside to get the morning paper, partly for the routine and partly to see if there's any activity at Laura's house. She's in her front yard, but instead of gardening, she's taking photographs of something with her phone. As I get closer, I realize she's documenting tire tracks in her flower bed, fresh tracks that definitely weren't there yesterday. Morning, Laura, I call out. She looks up with that same calm expression she's maintained throughout this entire situation. Good morning. Beautiful day for photography. The tire tracks are deep and deliberate, cutting right through her prize-winning rose garden. Someone drove across her lawn during the night, destroying months of careful cultivation. Any idea who might have done this? I ask. Oh, I have several ideas, she says pleasantly, but evidence is more useful than speculation. She shows me her phone screen, which displays what looks like security camera footage. The image quality is excellent, clear enough to identify the vehicle and license plate. New security system? I ask. Upgraded last week. Amazing what technology can capture these days. The footage shows Dylan's pickup truck making a deliberate pass through her garden around 2 a.m., then backing up to make a second pass for good measure. Have you called the police? Not yet. I'm documenting everything first. Photos, video, property damage assessment. She pulls out a measuring tape and starts recording the dimensions of the tire tracks. Insurance companies appreciate thorough documentation. At 9 a.m., I watch Laura leave in her Honda, heading toward downtown. She's dressed professionally again, carrying her ever-present portfolio and what looks like a tube of rolled-up papers. The neighborhood group chat is already buzzing with Beverly's community meeting invitation. Beverly C., Community Support. Gathering, today, 3 p.m., Veronica's house. Beverly C., let's come together to support our neighbors during difficult times. Claire H., what a thoughtful idea. Community is so important. Dylan T., count me in. We all need to look out for each other. Tom C., I'll be working, but thanks for organizing. Tom's diplomatic non-participation is noted by everyone, but nobody calls him out directly. At 11 a.m., Dylan's truck appears in Laura's driveway. He gets out with a small bouquet of grocery store flowers and approaches her front door. When nobody answers, he leaves the flowers on the porch with what's probably meant to be an apology note. The flowers are still there when Laura returns at 1 p.m., but she doesn't acknowledge them. Instead, she parks in her garage and enters through the side door, avoiding the front porch entirely. At 2:30, cars start gathering at Veronica's house 3 blocks away. Beverly arrives first, carrying what looks like a casserole dish. Claire follows with a folder of papers. Dylan shows up in a different vehicle, a dealership loaner that's probably meant to replace his damaged truck. I position myself for a walk that will take me past Veronica's house right around 3 p.m., purely for exercise and fresh air, of course. The gathering is larger than I expected. Besides the core conspirators, there are several other neighbors who've been drawn in by Beverly's community support framing. Mrs. Patterson, the Johnsons, and even some people from adjacent streets. Through Veronica's large front windows, I can see the meeting in progress. Beverly's standing at the front of the living room, like she's chairing a board meeting, gesturing toward a flip chart with what appears to be bullet points. At exactly 3:15, Laura's Honda pulls up in front of Veronica's house. She emerges wearing a different outfit than this morning, something more formal, like she's attending a business presentation. She's carrying her portfolio and the tube of rolled papers, plus what looks like a laptop bag. The conversation inside Veronica's house stops as Laura approaches the front door. Beverly opens it with the kind of forced smile that suggests she wasn't expecting Laura to show up voluntarily. "Laura, how wonderful that you decided to join us." "Wouldn't miss it," Laura replies pleasantly. "I understand you're concerned about my well-being." She enters the house, and I can hear her voice carrying through the open windows. "I brought some materials that might address your concerns." The living room fills with the sound of papers being arranged and something electronic being set up. Laura's voice continues, clear and professional. "I thought you'd be interested in the results of my business partnership audit." I move closer to the window, pretending to examine Veronica's landscaping while listening to the conversation inside. The good news is that we've identified all the unauthorized expenses and fraudulent vendor contracts. The bad news is that the amounts are significant enough to trigger federal reporting requirements. Beverly's voice, less confident than usual. "Laura, we're not here to discuss business." "Aren't you?" Laura interrupts. "Because Dylan's been telling people that my business decisions are evidence of mental instability. I thought you'd want to see the actual numbers." There's the sound of papers being distributed, followed by several moments of silence that suggest people are reading something shocking. "These expense reports," someone says, it sounds like Mrs. Patterson. "Are these real?" "Completely documented," Laura confirms. "Cross-referenced with bank statements, credit card records, and vendor invoices. Everything's been verified by an independent CPA." Dylan's voice, defensive. "Some of those expenses were legitimate business costs." "Which ones?" Laura asks. "The spa weekend, the personal shopping trips charged to promotional accounts, the vendor kickbacks that weren't reported as income." More silence, then the sound of someone clearing their throat nervously. "There's also the matter of property damage," Laura continues. I have security footage of someone deliberately destroying my garden last night, along with a complete damage assessment for insurance purposes. The sound of laptop keys clicking, then Laura's voice again. Would you like to see the footage? That's not necessary, Dylan starts. I think it is, Laura says firmly. Since we're all here to discuss my behavior, let's examine everyone's behavior. The clicking continues, then I hear the unmistakable sound of video playback. Dylan's voice becomes strained. Look, I was upset. I made a mistake. You committed vandalism, Laura corrects. Destruction of property, trespassing, intimidation, all documented and ready for police review. Beverly tries to regain control. Laura, we're all friends here. Are we? Laura's voice is sharp now, because friends don't organize intervention meetings based on false information. They don't spread rumors about mental health. And they certainly don't coordinate property damage campaigns. She pauses, then continues in a calmer tone. But you're right about one thing. We should support each other. So I'm going to help everyone understand the legal consequences of the choices they've been making. The sound of more papers being distributed. These are copies of police reports, insurance claims, and business partnership dissolution documents. Everyone mentioned in the fraud investigation will receive official notification within 48 hours. The room erupts in multiple conversations as people try to process this information. I catch fragments. Didn't know about any fraud. Just trying to help. Never agreed to this. Laura's voice cuts through the chaos. The interesting thing about fraud investigations is that they examine everyone with knowledge of the misconduct, including people who attended meetings to discuss covering it up. The silence that follows is profound. Now, Laura continues, let's talk about community support. I'm dissolving my partnership in Sterling Mitchell Auto and selling my shares to a regional dealer group. The sale closes tomorrow. Beverly's voice barely above a whisper. You can't do that. Actually, I can. Partnership Dissolution Clause, Section 15. In cases of fraud or misconduct, either partner can force a sale with 24-hour notice. What about Adam? Veronica asks. Adam will receive his percentage of the sale proceeds, minus the amounts needed to cover fraudulent expenses and legal fees. The new owners will decide whether to retain him as manager. Laura's voice becomes brisk, businesslike. Dylan's employment will be terminated immediately. Vendor contracts executed without authorization are void. The summer promotional event is cancelled. She pauses, then adds, Oh, and I've filed a complaint with the State Attorney General's office regarding business fraud. They'll be conducting their own investigation. The meeting dissolves into chaos as people try to leave, ask questions, and distance themselves from the situation simultaneously. I retreat to a reasonable distance and watch as neighbors emerge from Veronica's house with expressions ranging from shock to panic. Dylan comes out first, phone pressed to his ear, having what sounds like a desperate conversation with someone. Beverly and Claire follow, whispering urgently to each other. Other neighbors scatter quickly, clearly wanting to avoid further involvement. Laura emerges last, carrying her materials with the same calm efficiency she's maintained throughout this entire situation. She loads everything into her Honda, then approaches the small group still standing on Veronica's lawn. Thank you all for your concern about my well-being, she says pleasantly. As you can see, I'm managing just fine. She gets in her car and drives away, leaving behind a neighborhood that will never look at community meetings quite the same way again. That evening, the group chat is conspicuously quiet. No photos, no commentary, no social coordination. Just silence. At 9 p.m., Adam's Tesla returns to their driveway. Through their front window, I can see him and Laura having what appears to be a calm, businesslike conversation at their dining room table. Documents are spread between them, and they're both taking notes. Whatever Laura's endgame is, she's just cleared the final obstacles from her path. The next morning brings an email that changes everything. From, Sterling Mitchell Auto. Subject, Business Transition Announcement. Time, 6:45 a.m. Dear valued customers and community partners, effective immediately. Sterling Mitchell Auto has been acquired by Regional Premier Auto Group. This transition will ensure continued excellent service while expanding our inventory and customer support capabilities. Please direct all business inquiries to our new management team. We appreciate your loyalty and look forward to serving you under our new ownership structure. Sincerely, Regional Premier Auto Group. I'm reading this over coffee when Tom calls, his accountant brain clearly working overtime. Did you see the announcement? He asks. Just now. How did she pull this off so fast? She's been planning this for months, Tom explains. The regional group has been looking to expand into our market. Laura just provided them with the perfect opportunity. What about Adam? He gets his percentage of the sale, but he's out as manager. The new owners are bringing in their own team. Through my window, I can see unusual activity at several houses. Beverly's car is gone. Unusual for a weekday morning when she's typically home managing HOA business. Dylan's house shows no signs of life, and his truck hasn't moved from where he parked it yesterday. At 10 a.m., 2 official-looking sedans arrive at the dealership. Through the showroom windows, I can see people in suits examining documents and taking photographs. The State Attorney General investigation is apparently moving quickly. Laura emerges from her house at 11 a.m., but instead of her usual business attire, she's wearing gardening clothes and carrying a flat of new roses. She's replacing the plants destroyed in Dylan's midnight rampage, working with the methodical precision that characterizes everything she does. Mrs. Patterson approaches hesitantly from across the street. Laura, dear, I wanted to apologize for yesterday. I had no idea what Beverly was really planning. Laura looks up from her planting, dirt on her hands, but her expression pleasant. No apology necessary, Mrs. Patterson. Community meetings can be educational for everyone. Is it true about the business sale? Completely true. The new owners take possession this afternoon. Mrs. Patterson fidgets with her garden gloves. What about Adam? Adam will figure out his next steps, Laura says diplomatically. Change can be an opportunity. At 2 p.m., a moving truck arrives at Dylan's house. He's apparently decided that staying in the neighborhood isn't advisable given the circumstances. I watch him load boxes with the frantic energy of someone trying to outrun consequences. Beverly's car returns at 3 p.m., but she parks in her garage and enters through the back door. Unusual behavior for someone who typically uses her front entrance as a social staging area. The afternoon brings a steady stream of official vehicles to the dealership. Police cars, state investigator sedans, and what appears to be an IRS audit team. The summer sales event banners are being removed, and several employees are leaving with boxes of personal belongings. At 5 p.m., Laura's gardening is interrupted by the arrival of a luxury sedan in her driveway. A woman in an expensive suit emerges, someone who clearly represents serious money and legal authority. They have a brief conversation on Laura's front porch, exchange documents, and shake hands with the formality of completed business. The woman returns to her sedan and drives away. Laura goes back to her roses, but there's something different about her posture now. More relaxed, like she's finally finished a long and complicated project. The neighborhood group chat remains silent all day. The first time in months that Beverly hasn't posted multiple messages about community activities, policy reminders, or social coordination. At 7 p.m., Adam's Tesla appears in their driveway for what I suspect might be the last time. He and Laura have another conversation on their front porch, this one longer and more animated than their recent exchanges. I can't hear the details, but their body language suggests negotiation rather than argument. Documents change hands, there's some pointing toward the dealership, and finally a handshake that looks more like a business agreement than a marital reconciliation. Adam loads several boxes from their garage into his Tesla, along with what appears to be personal belongings. Laura helps him carry some items, their interaction cordial but businesslike. At 8:30, Adam drives away. Laura watches from her porch until his taillights disappear, then goes back inside. The evening news features a brief segment about the auto dealership investigation, mentioning allegations of business fraud and misuse of promotional funds. No names are mentioned, but anyone following the story locally will understand the implications. At 10 p.m., my doorbell rings. Laura's standing on my porch with a bottle of wine and the expression of someone who's just finished a very long day. "I thought you might be curious about how this all worked out," she says. We sit on my back patio, away from neighborhood sightlines, while Laura explains the mechanics of her strategy. "The key was documentation," she begins. "Adam and Dylan got sloppy because they assumed I wasn't paying attention to the business side." "How long were you planning this?" 6 months of active planning, but I've been preparing for something like this since we started the dealership. Partnership agreements, financial controls, exit strategies. I learned early that hope isn't a business plan." She pours wine with steady hands. The gala was just the final confirmation that Adam's priorities had shifted permanently. "What about the neighborhood drama, Beverly's intervention meeting?" Laura smiles with genuine amusement. "Beverly made it easy by organizing everyone in one place. Instead of having separate conversations with different people, I could present all the evidence simultaneously." "And Dylan's vandalism?" "Stupid and impulsive, but it provided perfect documentation of intimidation tactics. The security footage made it impossible for anyone to claim this was just a business disagreement." We sit in comfortable silence for a few minutes, processing the day's events. "What happens now?" I ask. "Now I start the next phase," Laura says. "The gallery downtown is expanding, and they've offered me a partnership. Art appreciation is much more civilized than car sales. And Adam will find his way. He's got enough from the business sale to start over, and he's learned some expensive lessons about partnership accountability." She finishes her wine and stands to leave. "Thank you for being a good neighbor through all of this. It's nice to know that some people understand the difference between community support and social manipulation." After Laura leaves, I sit on my patio thinking about the events of the past week. A marriage dissolved, a business sold, a neighborhood power structure dismantled, and several people learning that actions have consequences, all executed with the precision of someone who understands that the best revenge is simply letting people face the results of their own choices. The next morning, Laura's roses are blooming beautifully in their newly planted beds, and the "for sale" sign goes up in front of Adam's former house. Change, as Laura noted, can indeed be an opportunity. 3 weeks later, I'm awakened at 11:30 p.m. by the sound of car alarms, multiple car alarms, creating a symphony of electronic distress that echoes through the quiet neighborhood. The sound is coming from the direction of the dealership. I throw on clothes and drive toward the commotion, along with what appears to be half the neighborhood. Police cars are already on scene, their red and blue lights painting the showroom in alternating colors. The dealership lot is chaos. Every car alarm is active, creating a cacophony that can probably be heard for miles. Security lights blaze across the lot, and there's a crowd gathering on the sidewalk. Laura's Honda is parked across the street, and she's standing calmly near the police perimeter, watching the scene with the detached interest of someone observing the conclusion of a long-running experiment. Officer Martinez is trying to coordinate the response while dealership security attempts to disable the alarms. The new management team is present, along with several people I don't recognize who have the look of lawyers and insurance investigators. Adam's Tesla screeches into the parking lot, and he emerges with the frantic energy of someone who's just realized his world is completely out of control. He's followed by Dylan, who apparently hasn't left town after all, and Veronica, whose usual composed demeanor has been replaced by barely contained panic. Beverly and Claire arrive in Beverly's SUV, drawn by the commotion but clearly unsure whether they should be here at all. The car alarms finally stop, leaving an eerie silence that feels almost louder than the noise. Officer Martinez addresses the crowd. "We need everyone to step back while we assess the situation." Adam pushes forward. "This is my dealership. I need to know what's happening." "Actually," says one of the suit-wearing strangers, "this dealership was sold 3 weeks ago. You no longer have authority here." The stranger turns out to be the new general manager, and he's clearly not impressed with Adam's dramatic arrival. "We received reports of unauthorized personnel attempting to access the premises," the manager continues. "Security footage shows someone trying to break into the office area around 11 p.m. Dylan shifts nervously, and I notice his hands are dirty. The kind of dirt you get from trying to force locks or climb fences. Laura steps forward from her position near the police line. "Officer Martinez, I believe you'll find this situation relates to the ongoing fraud investigation." She produces her ever-present portfolio and hands over what appears to be security footage on a tablet device. The previous management team has been attempting to retrieve certain documents from the office area, documents that are now evidence in a state investigation. The new general manager nods grimly. "We've been working with investigators to secure all financial records. Any attempt to remove or destroy evidence is a serious crime." Adam's face goes through several color changes as he realizes the implications. "We weren't trying to steal anything. Those are our personal files. All files related to business operations are now property of the new ownership," the manager explains, "including files that document unauthorized expenses and fraudulent activities." Veronica tries to salvage the situation. "This is all a misunderstanding. We just needed to collect some personal items." "At midnight," Officer Martinez asks skeptically. "By breaking and entering." Laura approaches the group with the calm authority of someone who holds all the cards. "I think there's something everyone should see," she says, pulling out her tablet again. She plays security footage that shows Dylan attempting to force the dealership's back door while Adam and Veronica act as lookouts. The timestamp shows 11:15 p.m., and the image quality is excellent. This footage was automatically uploaded to cloud storage and shared with the state investigation team, Laura explains, along with GPS tracking data from the vehicles involved. She shows another screen displaying location data that clearly tracks Adam's Tesla and Dylan's truck converging on the dealership at the same time. "Conspiracy to commit burglary," Officer Martinez notes, making entries in her incident report. "Attempted destruction of evidence, violation of restraining order." "Restraining order," Adam interrupts. The new general manager produces a legal document. "Filed yesterday after the previous management team made threats against current employees. You're not supposed to be within 500 feet of this property." The crowd of neighbors watches this unfold with the fascination of people witnessing a spectacular self-destruction. Beverly and Claire are trying to edge away from the scene, clearly wanting to avoid any association with the criminal activity. Laura addresses the assembled group with the tone of someone delivering a final presentation. "Since everyone's here, I thought you should know that the state investigation has concluded. The Attorney General's office will be announcing charges next week." She produces another set of documents. Wire fraud, tax evasion, conspiracy to commit fraud, and now attempted burglary and destruction of evidence. Dylan makes a desperate attempt to run, but he's immediately tackled by 2 police officers, who were apparently expecting this possibility. Adam stands in the middle of the chaos, finally understanding that his situation is completely hopeless. "Laura," he says quietly, "this has gone too far." Laura looks at him with something that might be pity. "No, Adam, this is exactly as far as it needed to go." She turns to Officer Martinez. "I have additional evidence that might be relevant to the charges." From her portfolio, she produces what appears to be financial records, communication logs, and photographic evidence documenting months of fraudulent activity. Everything's organized chronologically and cross-referenced with bank records, she explains. The CPA who conducted the audit prepared a complete forensic analysis. Veronica finally breaks down completely, sobbing as she realizes the scope of the legal consequences they're facing. "We never meant for it to go this far," she cries. "It started small, just a few expenses. It started with theft," Laura corrects, "and it escalated to fraud, intimidation, and now burglary." The police begin making arrests. Dylan for attempted burglary and destruction of evidence, Adam for conspiracy and violation of the restraining order, Veronica for fraud and conspiracy. Beverly and Claire retreat to Beverly's SUV, clearly hoping to escape before anyone remembers their involvement in the intervention meeting. But Laura's not finished. "Officer Martinez, you might also be interested in the community meeting that was organized to obstruct this investigation." She produces recordings. Apparently, she documented the entire intervention meeting. Conspiracy to obstruct justice, witness intimidation, organized harassment of a fraud investigation witness. Beverly's face goes white as she realizes that her community leadership role has just become a criminal liability. The arrests continue as the full scope of the conspiracy becomes clear. What started as business fraud has expanded to include most of the neighborhood's social leadership. As the police cars drive away with their various passengers, Laura stands in the dealership parking lot surrounded by the debris of Adam's former empire. The new general manager approaches her respectfully. "Ms. Mitchell, thank you for your cooperation with this investigation. The new ownership appreciates your professionalism throughout this transition." "It was my pleasure," Laura replies. "I believe in accountability." Tom appears at my side, having arrived to witness the conclusion of the drama he helped set in motion. "Think it's over?" he asks quietly. Laura overhears and turns to face us both. "It's over when the courts finish their work," she says, "but the important part is finished." She looks around the dealership lot, at the police cars departing with their cargo of former community leaders, at the neighbors dispersing with new understanding of consequences and accountability. "People make choices," she continues. "They assume those choices won't have consequences, or that the consequences won't find them. Tonight, consequences found everyone." She walks toward her Honda, then pauses and turns back. "Adam always said that business was about understanding what people really want. He was right about that. What I wanted was simple: honesty, respect, and accountability." She gets in her car and starts the engine. "I got what I wanted." Laura drives away, leaving behind a neighborhood that will never be the same, a business that's been completely restructured, and a group of people who learned too late that actions have consequences. 6 months later, the trials conclude with convictions across the board. Adam gets 18 months for fraud and conspiracy. Dylan gets 2 years for the same charges plus burglary. Veronica gets probation and community service, having cooperated with prosecutors. Beverly loses her HOA position and faces civil penalties for her role in the obstruction conspiracy. Claire moves to another state, claiming she needs a fresh start. Laura's gallery partnership flourishes. She's featured in the local business journal as an example of successful entrepreneurship and community leadership. The old Sterling Mitchell auto lot becomes a regional premier auto location, thriving under honest management and transparent business practices. And every morning, Laura tends her roses in the front garden of her house. Roses that grow more beautiful each season, planted in soil that's been cleared of all the old toxic growth. The neighborhood learns to function without its former power structure, and surprisingly, it functions better. People take responsibility for their own actions, help each other without expecting political favors in return, and generally behave like adults who understand that community means mutual respect rather than social manipulation. On quiet evenings, when I'm sitting on my back patio, I sometimes think about that night at the dealership when everything came together in a symphony of car alarms and consequences. Laura was right about one thing. People make choices, and eventually, those choices find their way home. The last time I saw Adam, he was getting into a cab outside the courthouse after his sentencing hearing. He looked older, worn down by the weight of consequences he never thought would catch up with him. As the cab pulled away, I remembered his words from that night at the gala. Find your own ride. He finally did,